So welcome everyone. Very nice that we already have more than I think 200 people joining us this time. So this is already a record for the Figma Munich Meetup. I mean, thanks to everything being remote. But yeah, we got a hell of a lot of signups this time. We have quite a lot of portfolios. Like we received over, I think, 45 portfolios from the awesome crowd. Unfortunately, we will not be able to go through all of them, but we cherry-picked, or not actually cherry-picked, we randomly picked a couple of ones that we're going to look at today. But first of all, I would like to get started with a quick round of introductions. So I'm going to start. My name is Philipp. I'm the co-founder of MVST, a digital product design and development agency located here in Munich. I'm going to be your host tonight, so I'm going to facilitate this session. And with me, I got some awesome colleagues and awesome design friends with me. So going to head off first to Steven, who is a leading designer at Personio. Maybe a quick introduction from your side.
Absolutely. But Philip, I've been meaning to ask you, what does MVST stand for?
So there is a meaning to it. There's in Munich there's an area like a small district that is called Max Vorstadt. Basically, we needed a name quickly, and we just took out the letters of that naming because our office was there, and that was the start of MVST, basically. Very good question.
Nice. I love a good story. You know, I get very curious. I think that's one of the qualities of a designer. So jumping to intros. Hi, everyone. Hello, world, as we have our global audience tonight. I'm Steven. I currently head up design and research at Personio, which is a German startup, but based across Europe, focusing on HR tools. Now, what I do is I'm building out the design and research function across 4 different crafts, from product design to research, content design, and also service design. And I've also been in the banking world over in London before my role at Personio, where I helped build out consumer banking apps across many different brands. Overall, I've got around 15 years of experience, around 6 in design leadership and management. And personally, I'm really passionate about accessible design also. I'm colorblind, so just a little accessibility need on my end, but it just helps me really empathize with customers and with users and just make sure that we're raising the bar for how we design products and services. Now, I know today we're going to be talking about UX portfolios. I can talk about the product design aspect or even the specialist UI and UX side. So I'll try and keep my answers and I guess the overall conversation as flexible as possible because we have such a large audience today.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Steven. So gonna be very curious and interesting to hear from you what your take is on portfolios, what you like, what you don't like, and what you're looking for. Next up, on my side, at least to my right, we have Gabriela. Gabriela is currently a senior UX designer at Volt, so also very well-known company. Gabriela, a couple of words from your side.
Yes, well, thank you for inviting me to this talk, and hello world. Yes, as you said, I'm currently working at Bolt. You might know us for our delivery platform, but we're trying to do a little bit more than that. So we like to call ourselves a technology company. I've been at Bolt for the last 6 months almost, so I'm still kind of new. But before that, I was working at Clark, a German insurance brokerage company, and I was there for 2.5 years before moving to Volt, and before that, I was working in New York for a series of companies from scale-ups, startups to corporate. So I do have experience in kind of like looking for designers that could do different functions in those type of companies. So I think when a designer is needed in a corporate world is kind of different from a startup, especially a 10-person startup, which is where I was at, and same thing for a scale up or a startup. So looking forward to sharing my experience.
Awesome, very nice. Gonna be super interesting.
Then,
yeah, Marcus also joined us just right now. Gonna just continue the introduction. So we also have Henry on board. Henry is currently a digital consultant and UX recruiter at Concept House. So actually, we also not only got designers and like a designer perspective, but we also got the recruiting perspective. Henry, a couple words from your side.
Yes. First of all, thank you for the that I can join the meeting. It's a pleasure for mine, and it's quite interesting to take my input from a recruiting perspective into this meeting. I'm working at Conceptus Digital. We are just focused on complete and only focused on UX UI design recruitment and consulting. Consulting is more kind of structure and strategic consulting in design teams. And yeah, we're working every day with a lot of portfolios and try to find the right designers for our clients. And we always need to working with the expectations of our clients for the portfolio. So all in one, we
Awesome. Thank you, Henry. Like gonna be interesting seeing your side of things as well, not only our designer eyes to get into the round. And then last but not least, we have Marcus on board as well. Marcus is currently the director of product design at Bubble with a lot of experience in various companies, also various big and well-known companies. Marcus, a couple of words from your side to get started.
Yeah, cool. I made it. I was hanging out in the wrong call. I was in a Google Meet and I was like, why?
Is no one joining?
Anyways, yeah, cool to be here. But so about me, I'm been doing this for a while now and been working with IDEO in the US and Europe for about 10 years and then basically moved to Berlin and basically started working with a couple of startups and tried a couple of my own businesses and also consulted with Bubble a while ago. And now I'm for a year almost at Bubble and like kind of rebuilding and reorganizing and like doing a lot of things there to kind of set us up for success essentially. So yeah, pretty cool to see.
Thank you, Marcus, and thanks for having you on board as well. Really nice, really experienced. So I'm gonna be very curious what your take is on portfolio, what you're looking for. So to get the ball rolling, what are we going to do tonight? So the next 40 minutes, 45 minutes, we actually just want to discuss ins and outs of portfolios. Do I need a portfolio? What should be in it? What should not be in it? What are recruiters looking for? What are design leaders looking for? And so on and so forth. So we're going to have a nice round panel discussion about everything portfolio. After that, we going to look at, let's see how much time we have, but at least 4 to 5 portfolios have been sent in by the lovely audience. And after that, we're going to have a little Q&A. And for this, I already going to open the Q&A channel because there might be popping up questions during our talk already, and we obviously then try to address all of them later at the end of the call. So feel free, on the right side, you should now have a Q&A tab where you can put in questions that we're going to answer either live in the chat, in the call, or also during the call in the chat. Obviously, if there are any other topics, please just raise them. I mean, we have really the whole world listening to us, which is absolutely amazing. And yeah, I mean, let's get the ball rolling. Portfolios. How important is it to have a portfolio as a designer? Let's start with the very fundamental and basic. What is your take on it? Maybe Steven, what is your take on it, having a portfolio? Are you looking at portfolios? Do you think it's an absolutely need as a designer to have a portfolio?
It's a really good question. Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to job hunting and applying, the first thing that we do as people, hiring managers or people reviewing applications, is we just want to sneak peek at people's work. So I would say, yes, having a portfolio is not only important, it's pretty essential. Now, obviously, this also depends on the level of experience, and we'll talk through the different, I guess, nuances of how to present your work as you progress. But I'd say yes. I remember when I was starting out, even before my first design job, I still had examples of work which I had done, which was self-initiated, and then slowly built up a portfolio. Where I would also maybe add some more depth is understanding the role you're applying for and trying to tailor the content for the role. So initially I mentioned that I'm currently hiring for product designers. Previously, I distinguished between UX and UI. So there are those nuances, and having things like filters in there so that people can see product design work versus web design versus graphic design could also help. But to start off with and answer your question very directly, yes, I think that a portfolio is really important.
I was guessing that this is the answer. Henry, you take from a recruiting perspective, like, are you actually taking on persons that are not sending you a portfolio? Like, how important is it from that side of things? You're muted, Henry. We can't hear you. Now we can.
Sorry for that. Yeah, I'm completely on the side, like Steven. In my opinion, is it very, very important for freelance designers or for designers who are looking for a permanent position. It depends a lot of the experience at the level he's working and what kind of role he's looking for. All in one, you really, really need a portfolio. But there are actually also designers out there who have been work in the business, for example, 15 years and haven't really needed a portfolio till yet. Yeah, especially when you're freelance designer or applying for a permanent position, yeah, is it a basic?
Yeah. Markus, let me ask you a funny question. Like, I assume you don't maintain any portfolio anymore, given the position that you're in now. Like, up until what point were you like still having a portfolio like that is more visual, maybe as well than just a CV that is representing your work history?
Yeah, as I said, it's depending on
that was towards Markus, Henry.
Oh, sorry.
All good, no worries, no worries.
Sorry, Markus.
Yeah, I have to think, but I definitely had something that I could share in terms of that was kind of like a portfolio, but maybe more focused on the roles and kind of things like that, but still having some kind of visual anchor and kind of describing kind of the impact maybe a little bit more. But in general, I had something when I needed it, let's put it that way. So I didn't like, I probably wasn't the best at maintaining a constant something that like people could look at. Especially like when you're with the company for 10 years, then that's becomes less important. Maybe it is important for sharing your work and kind of showing what you're working on, but that's the other problem of working in a company where most of the stuff you're working on is under NDA. So I usually didn't have a public portfolio, let's put it that way.
That's a point that I want to touch on later on as well, like what to do if I don't have any work to showcase or that I'm not allowed to showcase. Maybe before getting into that and before starting about the different nuances of portfolio and the different levels, Gabriela, what are like maybe some things that you think are absolutely necessary to be included in a portfolio? Like, what are things that you would look immediately if you open up a portfolio that you're reviewing, which you would highlight?
Yeah, one thing I want to add, like what a portfolio, why it's important to have one, or why should there be one, is just like a visual representation of your experience. So like explaining what your focus is on the portfolio is the first thing that I look for. Like, what is this person strengths on? So that's one of the first things that I look for. Like, how do they label themselves, more or less? That way, when I go into the case studies, then I have a better understanding of like why they're explaining certain things certain way. So if they differentiate themselves more on the UX side or the UI or the visual side, I look for that.
Okay, cool. So you already mentioned like 2 points now, which is basically it should be somewhere highlighted how they, or with what kind of direction they kind of facilitate more, right? Is it like visual UX? Is it more UI? Is it like overarching, basically a more generalistic role? And the second part you already mentioned slightly is the showcases. What other things, Stephen, Mark, Henry, that you guys think that are absolutely necessary that should be included in any portfolio?
So I would say, so basically, I'm not a designer, but basically, I think a portfolio must be clearly and simply structured, because hiring managers, as you guys, want to get a maximum impression of design skills in as little time as possible. This means that if you have to prepare a portfolio that it's too complicated or long, it might be too much for the hiring manager to handle it in a limited time. But it doesn't always have to be this way. It's important to include a short description of yourself, some kind of CV, and then 1 to 3 showcases. Yeah.
Cool. Stephen, Mark, anything to add from your side, what you're absolutely looking for in a portfolio?
Yeah. So first and foremost, your work. We want to see your work. So put your best foot forward and think of the hierarchy also. So your proudest project should be the first one we look at, and put them in order of importance, because if you have many, then we may not have the time to scroll down all the way. Also think of 3 things. So first, as I said, the work, we want to see the quality, the output. We're also interested in the process. So think of that as the second thing. Now we're seeing case studies emerging, that wasn't always the case, but it's really helpful to take us on that journey and show us how you work. And then also the impact. So how did this work? How did your involvement impact the project, impact the customers, maybe even impact the business? And if you're able to address these 3 things by showing your work in a case study format, that will be really helpful and really insightful for us.
Yeah, of course. Also, is it interesting to, you always can include various client references also, for which client you worked before? Or what do you think?
Cool. Awesome. No, I think that gives a good impression already on like the different things that should definitely be included. So we got the strength, we got more of it like the direction. The hierarchy is very important of like what to show first, as Stephen mentioned. It's the recruiter or even the design managers that are going to review these through a lot. So try to spark interest at a very early stage, I think is what Stephen like trying to point it out as well. But then have some depth to the portfolio in sense of it makes sense to start with what the outcome is. And I think that's something that I'm not seeing a lot. It's like the case studies always start from the idea down to what the output is. I think, and Stephen and I take that away from what you said as well, switch it up. We want to see maybe a first glance, a first interest of what you're visually doing, what your actual output is, and then explaining us how you got there.
Absolutely. Show us that amazing work and then take us on the journey. But unfortunately the process is very competitive, and you're fighting for time and attention as hiring managers also. We really want to find the best candidates, and we're looking at portfolios. We're spending time going through, but the easier you can make it for us to see how great you are, then you're doing us a huge favor too.
Absolutely.
I think also on the role that you're looking for, because if you're looking for someone more UX focused, they will probably not have the greatest designs, and they will probably want to leave that until the end, and they want to show their process first. So I will say, like, depending on where your strengths are at, then show that first, definitely, and then go and tell us the journey of like what the rest of the process was like.
Very fair point, Gabriela. Very fair point, to be honest. At least for the more visual designers, UI designers, definitely start with what the output is. I think that needs to hook us.
Yeah.
Marcus, what do you think, like a portfolio that, like, coming from a junior position, like how should they approach showcasing work if they have not that much work experience? Like how would you take that? Like what do you want to see? Is it like personal home project? Is it like redesigns of big public well-known applications? What do you think is the best approach for very young and eager designers that are just starting out?
I mean, from my perspective, I mean, we are basically always looking at product designers, so we don't differentiate so much. So I think I would, for a junior person, always look at the craft, and so that kind of shines through in most of the pieces, even maybe in the CV and stuff like that, where like sometimes turned off just by the layout and the font choices, to be honest. Which I think like is a foundation somebody applying then for a junior role should have to kind of because I think the process and kind of UX part you can learn more easily or like can grow with, and I think I would be always looking for the craft perspective there. And then I mean, obviously if we just look at the portfolio, then there's more steps involved in terms of talking to the people and walking us through stuff and all that, but I think that's something where I would be focusing on. And if you don't have enough work, then I think definitely inspirational projects that people pick themselves and beyond the dribble kind of over design things, then I think there is definitely potential in there to get the attention of the hiring manager.
So first off, they need to get the attention in order to talk to you. But like what I take away from it is definitely trying to showcase the craft, meaning having something tangible, having any kind of like private project that maybe is a bit more than just one dribble screen that just shows something visual, but that has a little depth to it. Henry, go ahead.
Yes, just screenshots are not always that good. I think it's also really important to describe exactly the whys and hows of the work what you did, especially on a UX portfolio. Not only screenshotting of the prototypings. I don't know. It's more the hows and the whys of the work that you did. What I said.
So if we now talked about like, okay, definitely a portfolio is essential for a designer. We have talked a little bit about like what to outline in a portfolio, especially now for the junior role. What I like your takes, Stephen, if you like hiring now for more mid-level to senior roles, like what is the change that you see in portfolios and what are you looking for specifically then? Because you're obviously going not just for the craft, but you need more out of it. What are the things that you then look at?
Absolutely, and I'll link it to your last question also, just to talk about the junior or associate level, because this is, remember, also the first impression where you can focus on personality and you can also show your passion and drive. As a junior or associate, we understand you're not going to have much work. You may not even have real world projects, and that's okay. This is where you prove your drive and your culture fit, so to speak. And then as you move into mid-level and senior, this is where the storytelling can change and you can take us on that journey of your process, regardless of your craft, and start to tell us more about what you did as an individual versus what you as a team achieved. And it's really helpful for us to understand what you did, what dials you shifted, where you failed also, where you struggled, because this for us is insight into your thinking and your maturity. And at a senior level, this is then a combination of ticking many boxes, from the craft to the process, to stakeholder and team communication. And you can elaborate and take us through all of those steps. Again, being humble and accepting the challenges, but then also looking at some of the other metrics, such as performance, or what the goal of this project was, and the before and after comparison. And that shows that level of maturity and seniority in your design position. Ultimately, it's about fidelity within each of those steps of your case study.
Yeah. Do you, like, maybe directing it a bit into Gabriela's direction, like if you now take like from the junior level upwards, like from my perspective, like especially in the junior level, I think and CV that comes with a portfolio is not even that important. I think most of the time a portfolio is, for me at least, is most of the times already quite sufficient. Like how is your take on either combining a classical CV within the portfolio, or should the portfolio be something that is like standalone and the CV standalone, especially if you go to more senior roles where they have more experience in work, where they might want to outline a couple of things that might not fit in the portfolio? What is your take on that?
That was for me, right?
I mean, if you want to grab it, grab it.
I heard my name at the beginning, but I was like, I don't think that was for me exactly. But I think, or like, it's all connected, because you don't know what they're going to be looking at. If they're going to be looking at your resume by itself and then they'll be sold on that, or they'll be like looking at your portfolio and not have the time to look at the other stuff. So I think you need to make sure that wherever this person is coming from, you have enough information to grab their attention. So the CV shouldn't just be titles and companies and the length that you worked on. It should explain what you did. What was your impact? What was like the things that you made a difference on? And that should just be complemented by the portfolio. And in the portfolio, you should also explain what else you did, what were some of the different activities you did outside of the projects itself, because if you're more of a senior designer, I will expect like more involvement within the team if there is a bigger team, or any other activities that you do outside of the company itself even.
Henry, from a recruiting perspective, obviously, I think a CV is something that is very important for you in trying to find the right person for your client. Like, how is your take on that? And like mixing CV and portfolio, should it stand out? Should it like be the same, or can it be mixed together? How do you see that from your perspective? Mute.
Sorry again. So I see a trend. So in my experience, that most of the freelance designers' portfolios are including the CV, and for permanent position applications, they are separating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but in my opinion, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Like you see both working with your clients, with the
yes, sure. It's a little bit more complicated to open two files, but
yeah, I mean that's a fact as well. I mean, right? It also depends on the size. I mean, Markus, you are like also coming from IDEO, which is a very big company. Also, I think, I mean, Bubble is a big company. Like, I mean, there's a screening process before some of the CVs even get to most of you, right? And I think it's also something to think about when sending over a portfolio. And maybe we can combine that question a little bit, because like one of the topics that I have as well, what is the perfect format for a portfolio? Do you want a PDF? Should it be a website? Is it like a fully fledged Figma prototype that's like cool interactive? Like, what's the perfect format? Markus, maybe you start with that one. I'm curious to get your opinion there.
I mean, just getting back a little bit to the CV. I mean, I think some of the recruiting tools, they require you to upload both essentially or whatever. So I don't know how that looks on that end, but essentially, I mean, personally, I mean, as I described, maybe I use the CV more as a kind of entry point, and then usually that is in a PDF, and that's within the tool we are using. So that's more convenient, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to branch out to the website and kind of see how good they are at storytelling, and kind of in terms of how that all pans out then in detail, because then you can see more than in a PDF. But it wouldn't stop me from talking to a person just because they submitted a PDF or something else. I think that's definitely not so important. I think web is maybe a little bit better to kind of do a more holistic kind of storytelling, and you can include more interesting bits and pieces, but it's definitely not.
Does it for you, maybe an unfair question, but I think in the digital area that we are now in, like if someone has a website portfolio, as we are all, or most of us are looking for product designers, we're looking for people that use technical products. And I mean, there are many tools out there, even if you're not a coder and a developer. Does that like already give them a leeway and a head start where you think like, okay, I think like maybe that's more leaning towards that? Or do you really think like, no, I'm looking neutral at like either PDF or also website applications?
Probably. I mean, I would say that, I mean, it also depends a little bit on the role, obviously. I mean, if I'm looking for a kind of a front-end developer, designer person, then that might be more important than for others. But I think in general, I do like the overlap of technology and design. So I would appreciate it, but depending on the role I'm looking for, then that's not a big criteria. I mean, especially usually if you have two portfolios and you're looking at two different people, then I think craft and maybe talking about your craft and process and things like that, and how you tell the story is more important than like maybe a gimmicky web page or something. So
Steven, Gabriela, Henry, any additions from your perspective there?
Yeah, quickly, because this is a really interesting topic, because we're focusing on portfolios, but the CV aspect is one which can really be a blocker for a hiring manager, because the first thing we receive when someone applies is the CV.
Yeah.
There are some, you know, the portfolio, it's actually really great that there's no predefined format, because we get a sense of the individual and their creativity and their perspective. Whereas the CV, this is that first step. Some things which I have seen, for example, no portfolio link on the CV. That's immediately a blocker, and I have to run around and say, please send me your portfolio. So please include your portfolio. If there are passwords, include the password. Also, think of it creatively. If we're talking about especially design roles, take the opportunity to also design your CV and give us, again, a taste of your design craft. The same with content designers, for example. I've seen some really interesting content designer CVs who, in some cases, haven't even got portfolios or websites. So there's really a lot of flexibility in what you do as an individual, but really see this barrier to entry being that CV, and an opportunity to, again, really position yourself for us as hiring managers to just see all of the right information clearly and just make that link clickable too.
Yeah, of course. So regarding the question to the format, I've not seen any trend from my clients on this question so far, but basically, is it easier with a website or online portfolio? But for example, when it comes NDA content, for example, I would recommend a PDF portfolio, of course. Yeah. But I don't see a clear trend on this question, to be honest.
Yeah. No, but I think so we talked about portfolios, but now that we all basically agreed on, hey, actually the CV in at least bigger companies where you need where you're going into an HR tool and you need to be like kind of processed first, it's actually similar or even more important to get started with and to get a head start, and then to properly include your portfolio with that. If it's like attached, if it's like a website link, I think that is then the other things. But I think that is a very, very important task, right? A part to get these insights right, because like especially as a junior designer, you might not know how the hiring process works at bigger companies. You might not be familiar with it. So that is very, very valuable, I think, for the crowd out there as well. Continuing down that discussion about format, I mean, we've talked about website, we've talked about PDF. How important are like prototypes, videos of maybe the real product or things like that? How is your take on that, and what do you take away from it? Whoever wants to take it first.
I can jump in. I think, again, so it's really individual, but it is helpful to see more interactive or higher fidelity, again, depending on the craft, to Gabriella's point. So if we take product design or UI design, going from a series of screenshots to a Figma prototype, then we can really play around. We can even see things like your organization in Figma and interact. And if you have a video, again, you're showing a different aspect of, again, branching on UX and animation and interaction. The same goes for UX. You can really control the narrative of how things flow, and you can point out pain points, and you can be fun with it too. And with, you know, things like writing or service design, really show us the dysfunction in the flow and then how you overcame. So many things nowadays. There's mural, we can link to. I really encourage drawing the hiring manager in, and again, trying to take as much of their time to see the quality of your work.
There I have an excellent question, because I find that quite interesting. Is maybe also then Gabriela and Marcus, like, do you have the time? And like, if you're looking at a portfolio, are you actually like clicking into these things? Or also your HR manager or the people that are like reviewing the CVs beforehand, do you think they really take the time to like dive into Figma prototype and check the Figma files out?
I feel like they need to have a story first. I've seen portfolios with just prototypes and not explanation on what is it that I'm looking at, and I think that doesn't help. So I will take the time to look at the prototype if I'm understanding what the project is about, what is it that they're showing me. If not, it will be really hard for me to be motivated into clicking into something that I'm like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. But I think it will be definitely a value add to see farther than just the screenshots, especially if you're looking into a more visual focused role and you want to show like your other skills. So, but explain, please. What is it that someone is supposed to be looking at, and what can they expect in this prototype?
Yeah. So, but I'm taking
also.
Yeah, Marcus. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I would. I mean, first of all, I think something we haven't talked about is I appreciate if people keep the focus and not put every project in there. So if we have like, if I only have to look at 3 things, but those are the best things, then that's more important than showing me every prototype you ever did or something. So, but also I would look at those things more in detail, to be honest. Once we get into kind of a case study stage, than me clicking around and finding all the details in the prototype or stuff like that. So I wouldn't have the time to go through into all this stuff. Sometimes I get excited about a certain portfolio, then I might be clicking through stuff, but that's if you have to go through a lot of things, then that's definitely not possible. Otherwise,
so again, it's more like it needs to draw you in, it needs to draw the attention in order to then be basically worth it for you as well to click into it. But if it's there, it's a nice addition. But talk about it beforehand and not just put in a couple of Figma prototype links and just expect to click on it without having any backstory to it. I think that's a bit the takeaway, right? Marcus, you just mentioned a very interesting point. I also have that on my list. What is the ideal amount of projects? Like, how many projects should I showcase in order to show variety, show my craftsmanship? What is the ideal number there? I mean, you mentioned 3, but I don't know if that was your ideal. But yeah, what do you think there?
sorry, I mean, if that was a question, I'm constantly pressing Command D for like Google Meet to unmute and mute, so, and then I'm bookmarking the page. But anyways, yeah, no, I think it's for me the magic number is 3, and I don't need to see everything. That's like I mean, usually, I mean, if you think about the work you've done, then it's like probably you have a list of the top 10, and then you can pick the 3 things that you're most proud of or excited about, and then talk about those things. Then talk about everything. That's kind of.
I would say the same. So most of the designers or design portfolios got 1 to 4 examples or projects or case studies, and not more.
Yeah. Gabriela, Steven, you copy that? You have a different opinion? Yeah.
Although that one case study, I'm sure it could be broken down into 2. So I would rather see like the same topic or project and product broken down into 2 separate case studies, so you can really get into the why are you making the decisions and explaining a little bit more than having to see this long case study that it's really put in, like to see like, oh my God, did I have to read all through that? So break it down into 2 or 3 projects, even if it's about the same thing.
I think that's a very helpful tip also for the audience, right? If you don't have that many projects, think about ways, maybe how you can slice it. Maybe there are different aspects to a project. Maybe there's like a mobile pattern to it. Maybe there's like a separated web story to it, or just different parts of the product that you can explain separately. I think that's a very, very nice point, Gabriela. Thank you for that. Steven.
Yeah, so amazing. I fully agree with what Gabriela said, yes, and everyone's been saying. But I want to talk about a pitfall here also, because often we'll see may submit 1 or 2 case studies, and then in the interview they would run us through the same case study, and then we walk away having only seen the 1 or 2 in total. So if there's a way of having a few to pick from, and you might submit 1 or 2, but then show us a 3rd one and a 4th one, we've actually seen 4 case studies. We talked about the ideal number in your portfolio, and this is where I talk about hierarchy. Put what you're proudest of at the top, and then have additional content. And this is where it's really tricky for junior or associates who may still be figuring out who they are. We see many applications or portfolios coming through with lots of graphic design projects, logo projects, some, product design. And this can actually hurt you, even though you're trying to put a lot forward. So this number of, 3 or so of strong projects, try to, if you can, also tailor the portfolio to the job type, whether it's through filtering and you filter, this is a product design role, I'm going to just add the URL, the link to the filtered section, or have separate pages, because if there is a more specialist role and we see more generalist work, it creates a picture which unfortunately can hurt you. So grapple with this is actually one of the core challenges, I think, for junior level or even early mid-level people who are going through that transition.
Basically being able to tailor, even if you only have one portfolio or a couple of projects, but being able to tailor it a bit into the specific role that you're applying for, giving it more parts on the visual side, or giving it more part on the storytelling, UX, and like concept side of things. Cool. Yeah. I mean,
just think a logo project unfortunately will not land you a product design role. So is it really helping you, or is it getting in your way? So to Gabriella's point, can you look at your case study or your one project and break it down into a few and create a bit more interest and also show more depth?
Yeah. Adding to that, and I think that was actually a good cue for me, is like you just talked about, like, okay, maybe I come from a visual background, maybe I do photography in my free time, or I love to draw on the iPad or whatever. I'm an illustrator, like I love to illustrate things, or even like design typography or things like that might not fit initially with the role. It's still worth putting it into the portfolio just to show like the personality and like the human being that's behind it? What do you think about that? Marcus is nodding. That I think is a clear yes.
Yeah. I mean, I would say yes. I mean, it's I'd love to see also kind of things that, like, if people talk about whatever they are, like obsessed about food or whatever, and like make it a compelling case why they're obsessed about food, then I think I'm more excited than if they don't talk about this. So we also had somebody who applied and was talking about all the kind of visualizations they did that weren't necessarily relevant for the role, but I used that as a good kind of showing the kind of that they aren't so narrow-minded, and kind of there is something that they are excited about outside of the core of what they might be doing for as a profession.
So definitely add in your personal creative traits into your portfolio if you have some. Any additions from the rest? Do you also think these are like helpful and should be in there? Maybe not prominently, but in a portfolio if they're available. Stephen is a bit hesitant there. I see that.
In a good and bad way, I think. So Marcus, I think, said it really well. It's about maybe also showing a bit more depth and personality, and you can do that directly on the portfolio or even on your CV. If you say my hobbies are XYZ, and you can link to things there. But remember, if we're seeing, and I'm going to just focus on what you mentioned, Philipp, typography as an example. Yeah. If we see 5 typography projects and 1 or 2 UX UI projects, then the balance is off. Yeah. So also edit and find that balance.
Yeah, I would say the same. So show not only your skills, also your personality. Be yourself on your portfolio, and try to show you, or try to put yourself in a customer perspective, and be yourself.
Yeah, I think we're all humans. We're all looking at this, and like we also want to see a human behind the screen. And I think like including this type of things on the About Me page, and if it's something that's important for you and you want the company that you're going to be working for to like give you the time to pursue like any side projects or anything that you really care about, I think it will be good to also show from the beginning like that is something important for you.
Cool, very interesting. No, I mean, I especially see it a lot in portfolios that we receive. There's always somewhere, there's like a creative, other creative outlet than just maybe the product design part, and I quite like to see it as well. But I agree with Stephen, should not be the prominent and the driving force. Can be additionally on the About Us or something like that. Stephen, as you mentioned in the beginning, you're always, you love good stories. I also love good stories. What I'm like, I want to start off with maybe like some funny, not so good examples, but like, what were the most interesting, maybe in a bad way to put it first, and then we go to the good way, portfolios that you have seen, that you have received? Maybe any funny stories that you have that you can relate off that you encountered with some portfolios.
So honestly, it's the good ones which stick.
The
reality is maybe
the good ones as well. I wanted to give some things like definitely like don'ts to the audience as well, but we can.
I mean, we covered don'ts. I think unfortunately, the reality is if it isn't that strong, it's not going to get our attention for that long, and that's the sad and harsh truth. The goods, I think we also covered a lot of that, but hook us. It's amazing where I go into a portfolio and I get a sense for the person's personality, and I say, "Ooh, this person seems interesting." So there's an element of culture. I see their work. There's the initial hook, again, thinking with a product design mindset, but then there might also be an attention-grabbing statement, or some people also do the TLDRs, the too long didn't read summary at the top for people who haven't got time. And that shows me they're thinking of their user or their viewer in interesting ways. So these are things which I find really interesting, and interestingly, it makes me actually stay and spend more time going through their portfolio. I haven't necessarily got too much time to review portfolios, but I will dedicate time to ones which are interesting, or I think there's more to, and I'll come back and I'll keep peeling away the layers.
Awesome.
That's interesting. So I have one example. Yeah, please don't put too much images of yourself in the portfolio, because I saw a couple of portfolios with, in every side was another picture of the designer. Okay, that's okay, but sometimes is it too much? And also, don't cheat. Don't put any projects on it which you didn't work on it. I also have an experience on this. This is normally basic, but
it's a very fair example, right? Only showcase work that you actually did. Maybe there also, I think, an important part. I think, Gabriela, you mentioned it. If you have worked in a team on a project, please state very clearly what your role was in all of that, because it might be misleading, right? And rather be honest at the beginning, because at some point we will find, or you might find out, right? So that is a very good point. Anything else to add, Marcus, Gabriela, from your side, to the topic of maybe definitely stand out, or do's and don'ts, I would call it?
I'm not sure I can call out a specific one, but I have a little secret maybe, because we talked about the CV versus portfolio and stuff, and the first thing you obviously look is the CV, and some people try to turn the CV into a portfolio. Mm-hmm. I don't like that, and I like when people design that too much, and then you have this all the whatever social symbols and everything like being right in your face there. I think if you can then maybe tone this a little down, and then I will be ready for your portfolio. But I think that those would be because I think if the CV is already pretty like unappealing, I don't know how to put it more mildly, then I won't go further. And so that's definitely something where I would, that's definitely a bad example. And good examples, I don't know, in the recent history, there's like definitely good examples, nothing that like I would say is like so memorable that I will be talking about it forever, but there's definitely the ones where you can dive deeper, and like the web stuff where I would say that's like they've put some time and consideration into how to tell the story and walk me through the stuff they worked on and those things. So I think, but I wouldn't have a specific one where like something like 10 Easter eggs happened or something like this. Hasn't happened to me.
Cool.
I don't
Awesome.
sorry, but yeah, just to add up to that, I don't have any special cases for that. But yeah, I feel like sometimes there have been 1 or 2 cases where I've seen they have tried too much and they try to go into this gamification type of approach, which makes it really hard to navigate. So sometimes less is more.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Also the pages. I saw a portfolio with more than 50 pages, for example, really, and that's also pretty much too much.
Awesome. Very, very insightful. Maybe before going to all the questions, we've received a lot of questions already. Why don't we put what we have just been talking about into good use, and we're going to take a quick glimpse at a couple of portfolios. Gonna point out the things that we definitely like, and maybe things that could be improved or that we see that are missing. So again, thank you to everyone that joined us, and thank you to everyone that sent in CVs. I was completely mind blown that we received, I think, over 40 CVs in total, portfolios in total, some including CVs, some not. But yeah, thanks a lot for that. As said, we can't review all of them, but we definitely picked out a couple of them randomly. So if you're in the call, lucky you, I would say. If not, maybe there is another chance at a later point in time. So I have brought up the first one. I hope everyone can see the screen sharing. I think you guys can. I hope the crowd can as well. So the first one that we are looking at is from Richard. He's a Munich-based UX designer. It's obviously a website portfolio, as you can see. I would slowly scroll through it. I would explain a couple of things as I see them. Then afterwards, let's have a little round of discussion here. So this looks pretty much like Munich, if I'm not right, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what this right here does. Okay, yeah, nice little animation and play. Then yeah, it's all about the process. He has some logos, I guess, of companies that he's been working with or for. And here is best actually, yeah, diving into the process of how he is, yeah, approaching, I guess, his UX, UI / product work. And then right away going into reaching out to the person and finishing it off with, I think, yeah, a CTA to the showcase. I'm gonna click that. Let's take a quick look there. So there is one showcase right here where he's talking about what has actually happened, what the project is about. Scrolling down there even has a somewhat of a testimonial in there. And then I guess he's starting off with the process. Yeah, starting off with the process, showing the process from interesting animation here as well with the mouse, from mockup or from wireframe to actual design. Showing some more of the actual finished work and then finishing off as well. Click on the about. I mentioned that some of the discussion now as well. Yeah, talking a little bit about himself, a little funny touch to him, and I think, yeah, finishing it off with the tools. Cool. What is your take on it? What do you like about it? What are things that you think you would still like to see more of?
I would say it's a really good one. The flow is quite nice. You get really fast what you're looking for, and especially, yeah, maybe would it be a little bit better with more cases or one more project, but all in one, I like it.
Cool.
If I look at this page and maybe the case study, this is the first thing we see. UX kisses product, and then I'm Richard. Really, this is your opportunity to put yourself first. So maybe start off with the I'm Richard and I'm a UX designer, because my eye goes to the wrong thing here, and the same with the Munich skyline. It's important space. This is all about you. This is where you can be shameless and just put yourself forward and use the space. So all useful stuff, and again, personality, but think of hierarchy. And Philip, if we just jump to based on the very quick glimpse we just got.
I mean, we are like taking it very quickly here. I think
what I see once you go a little bit lower is the case study Truckle. And at that stage, if you even just go up back to that round picture, this seems like the pitch for Truckle. So this is the company talking, this is the product talking. What was your challenge here? And you know, for me, this is almost going to the corporate website rather than you talking me through your process and your work. So we see this a lot. People, even in interviews or portfolio walkthroughs, talk us through the product and the company, but this is about you. So just dial up the you in all of this. That would be my advice, because the foundations are there, and it's just fine-tuning to really make it all about you as a designer and show us your thinking and process.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I feel a little bad about talking about this in public in front of so many people, but I think, I mean, one thing I would add, and I agree with the things Stephen just said, that the putting your process at the homepage kind of thing is an unnecessary detail that I would probably skip, because that's kind of, I mean, maybe it's a freelancer thing, then that's a little different proposition maybe. But in general, I would always lead with the work and not with the process, and then maybe you can talk about it when you go deeper. But and also like then not pretending you're an agency or something. That's kind of maybe another piece, I would say.
What are the things that you would especially point out that you like about this portfolio?
That's a good question. I mean, I do like, then once we scroll a little further down in the case study, that there are some details, and there is even some kind of journey part in there that's like being talked about, and maybe not in too much detail. I appreciate kind of how we got from the wireframe to the design. Also, it is a little gimmicky, I would say, but probably something interesting to some people, but not to me. And if you go further down, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks a bit more like a freelance portfolio in that sense, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And yeah, I would basically then more talk about the work. There's a lot of stuff around kind of the company, like there's the frame of the computer and all that, like a MacBook and stuff. So I would maybe focus more on the actual work than trying too much to put too much supporting material around it that's maybe not so relevant to the audience. But if you want to talk about the work, yeah, I can't evaluate that right now, so in detail.
No, I mean, should not do that in that round. I think that's none of our concern at that point. I think we really just want to try to bring as much knowledge from our perspective out there, what we value in a portfolio. So I think, yeah, I also was thinking about if we should blur this portfolio, but we asked the people very specifically that we're going to do an open round here. So and they complied to that. So yeah, cool. Anyone else, anything to add here? Any like good points that you liked about it to round it off?
Maybe Philip, sorry to jump in again, but I really like the sense of personality this person, right? And even the fact that they did have the Munich skyline, so they're clearly proud of their own brand. It's really just about that balance. I thought the logo and the animation was slick. So there are some really slick things here, and the person really knows what they're doing. It's just fine tuning, and we're all individual. And we're, it's easy to look at something and give feedback, but a lot of thought has gone into it.
Awesome. Cool. I would switch over to another portfolio. Again, a website. We have basically only received websites, to put that into perspective. I think there was one PDF, which we're going to look at as well, which at least I have found over the 45 emails. Maybe there have been more. This is Firoza. She's based in Toronto. Very straightforward website in that sense, with 2 clickable areas into her projects. Again, showcasing 4 different projects. I think each of them is clickable and brings you into some more details, talking about the duration, the tools that have been used, the responsibility, and also the team that was working on it. Giving a bit of a background, and then starting with stage 1, I guess, first process, talking about the pain points, talking about the stage 2 with some of the user personas, the storyboard, the whole ideation process, user flows, which are quite interesting if it comes to kind of the UX work, and then the sketches and prototype in high end and big fidelity, and then also some testing with, I think, clickable Figma prototype embedded right in the website, which doesn't have you to lead away from it. And then also navigation into the other showcases. So obviously we're doing a very quick glance here, but we don't have that much time, so I'm trying to make the best out of it. Maybe last, also clicking about the About Me, taking a look right here. It's a small letter, I guess, from Firoza. Explaining a little bit about herself. I think one thing we should make very clear: we don't want to compare the portfolios against each other. I think that should be a given. But maybe your takeaways. What are the things that you would like to point out that are very nice in the portfolio, that like draw your attention, and what are things that you could give her as some guidance to improve? Gabriela, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. I really like the homepage, how she started. Also, being a woman, and like I was able to relate, and I could see myself freaking out in front of the computer, and then also eating on top of my laptop. So that was very relatable. If it would have been a guy, also would have done it. Like, I really like those illustrations, so that was very fun for me to see, and definitely like I would have continued looking at the portfolio. So the projects, as we've been talking about, 4 projects, I think it's the golden number. So that was great. I like the little information about like kind of what to expect, and seeing the app design challenge, like knowing that those were probably not real projects. But I really like the brief on inside the, so yes, you can go into the details. What the team was about. I would have liked to see those names, what kind of other roles would have been, like, because she mentioned her roles, UX research and product design, but then the team, what was that team made out of? Product management, developers, like who else was involved in this project? So that would be like a tip I would give to improve. But yes, like this is very good. And then as we were saying, like, okay, show us the final visual. I think that's also was pretty nice. And if you can scroll, yeah, so like giving background is pretty good. So setting up the context, stage 1, I will not read it, but it's short enough for me to actually read it if I was like reviewing that.
But that's a very good point. Like, how much text is too much text as well? Like how much text are you actually reading? Like not that, like just taking that now as an example, obviously, but just in general, like how much text should there be in the explanatory process of a portfolio?
Yeah, definitely not too much, just enough to understand what's happening. So the background, I don't need to know every single detail. Just give me some like clues on what is it that I'm gonna have, like what were the challenges that you were expecting, and then going into a little bit more details, but not explaining like the process itself, if not like some learnings. I think this amount of text looks enough. It will really depend on what information is in here. So if I take a closer look, like, is this just a lot of blob that doesn't give me anything? Because then that would be like useless. So I'd rather get more in that sense, but just make sure you're concise and like describing the things in a way that anyone can quickly read it. So yeah, for now, like it looks okay, like enough text for me to like take the time and be like, okay, I can read this in a minute or less. Depends on my eyes.
Yeah, regarding the structure, I find it's really easy to find the right way what you're looking for, and especially in the beginning of the website, is it just two clicks, and then you get really fast to the 4 projects, and they are separated to 2 app to web projects, which is also really good. Yes, so all-in-one structure is really well.
Awesome. Anything else to add, Stephen, Marcus, or you comply with that?
I agree. I think it's really clean. It's really strong. The structure is spot on. I got personality from it. So I don't know, but my interpretation is that Firoza might be an illustrator. You know, whether it's true or not, again, I'm already starting to form this point of view. You know, it's got this playfulness. Even in the case studies, there was some rich illustration throughout. Yes, it actually did pull me in, and I've got it open on my side too. And even just something as simple as having the LinkedIn link at the bottom, then it allows me to dig deeper, as I was saying, those layers. So as far as I'm concerned, this person is really ticking all of the boxes and making it really easy for me to review their work.
What do you think in general about like social media links in a portfolio? I see a lot of linking me to Instagram, and like not just LinkedIn, which is the professional network, but then also to more private things. Like, what is your take on that?
I guess it depends on the content. So if their Instagram is an art curation, then great. If it's going to be holiday snaps, then it doesn't need to be there. So again, how is this contributing to the image? Personally, I probably wouldn't even click into it, but just saying, you know, again, even just looking here, we have LinkedIn, email, GitHub. I think that is a nicely edited list.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Then I would jump over to the next portfolio of Rashika, and basically her portfolio actually starts out with a little video. I think looks like an animated video. Sorry, it's not loading. I think my internet is occupied a bit here with the call. Let me try to refresh it once. If not, then we just skip it. But I guess it's an introductory video that is explaining a little bit about herself. On the left side, as we just mentioned, like LinkedIn, GitHub, looks like she has a podcast, her Dribbble profile. And then she's starting off, I don't know why my internet is not working currently. Nope. Okay, we might have to skip that one if I can't click on the pages. I'm very sorry for that. I don't know what's happening right here. But then let me skip over, like, let's use this one first, because that is actually a PDF
Philipp,
which I loaded.
Can I just mention one quick thing? Because
Sure.
with Rashika, I read that she's a UX researcher. So just I wouldn't necessarily assess them with the same lens as a UX or product designer. I would then really assess them as a UX researcher. So I just wanted to say that also, just in case Rashika is.
Yeah. So now it loaded. So the about me actually load. So yeah, I think she's making very clear that she's a UX researcher in here and not like a UI designer in that sense. She still has a portfolio with, I think, it's directly Figma links and actually live websites, which you can look at. I'm just going to click one. Let's see if it opens. Yeah, it would then be, I guess, a fully clickable prototype. And then there's also the little CV part about the education inside that profile. I think one thing to mention is, right, I think that we made very clear is it would be nice to get a little bit of information about the portfolio before going into the Figma. I think that is like one thing. But given that she's a UX researcher, but she's still showing off also a skill in, I guess, visually and UX, I think that is a good part to take away. Other than that, what do you think about a video? Let's take that video part. I like it. What do you think about like something different than just written text in order to represent myself?
Does it have any volume to it?
I think it has, but it's not loading. Somehow my internet is not. But yeah, I think it has some audio to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like that intro. Like it's different, and I could be like looking at her resume while listening to like her video playing. So yeah, I'll probably like if I would have received this, I would have had that. Like I'll put a press play and then listen to the video and then just read over like her resume or start going into like the other tabs. But I like that approach.
Cool.
Yeah, I could see a video making sense even in a project, kind of summarizing it in a video if it's well done and not too long.
Yeah.
I would say as a UX researcher, I would expect a different kind of portfolio maybe than the one we see here. So I would more focus on the research you've done and the insights and all those things than maybe linking to Figma prototypes or something like this. So maybe that's something to look at in general, but I think if there would be more padding around the padding in a sense of like giving some introduction to the things, then I could appreciate it, I think.
Something that just like obviously video, you visually, right? You kind of want to look at in the busy times that we are in. Have you ever received a portfolio that kind of contained audio that was walking you through the showcase maybe? I mean, I'm just referring to listening to podcasts while working and things like that, right? It could also be something that could at least think of. I haven't seen it myself, but yeah, curious if you ever came across it. Nope. What would you make of it if you would come across it? Like giving a showcase, having like a 1 minute and 30 seconds explanation about what I did in like my spoken voice, which also can give a bit more context.
I mean, it always feels, I mean, it would feel to me probably like it takes up too much time then, even though it might be the same. I mean, but in general, I think with like looms and things, maybe there's some opportunity to think through this, but it's also like getting then maybe a little bit into more a detailed route in terms of if you're like reviewing lots of portfolios, then that's a little harder to do, to watch like a 2-minute video per person or something.
But maybe giving the option, right? Having the combination of either screening the text, screening the showcase, but also having maybe a loom in there with my face, with me like fumbling around, expressing myself, giving some personality shots there. Cool.
So yeah, I will say I personally haven't done it. I did it for a case study. So the last round of a interview process when I needed to explain like my solution. I had to explain it. Like I had like to show this, and sometimes I'm like I thought like, okay, all the explanations that I have to do, they're not going to read it. So I actually made a video, ended up being about 25 minutes long. So yeah, you can. It was a case study, so I needed to explain like the entire process. But yeah, for a portfolio, I agree. Like it might get too long, but maybe you might want to try it for the case study. It wasn't for gold, so.
Cool. I'm switching over to another portfolio. We have like 2 more, and then we would jump into some Q&As because we have received millions of questions from the people around here. So Thibault, product designer, turned complex products into beautiful interfaces, and he is right off hitting the ball with some showcases, giving a bit of variety, showing his design system skills. Has like, I think, a total of 5 showcases, and rounding it off with a little bit more about him and some of his past experience. And let me click onto one of them. Which one you want to go look at? Let's use the mobile app, which then opens a full case study, I guess, with an overview process, and hitting it off again right away with some visuals instead of actually a very concise and very precise case study in that sense, and then showing off his other work right after that. Yeah, you take on that. What do you think about it? What are the good points? What would you give him as an improvement?
So if I quickly jump in, I think the format and the presentation is good. I think it's clean, the home screen especially. If we go into the case study, the Covoitici app, there, reading the overview and looking at take away that this was probably a fairly focused piece of work. It starts with secondary research, iteration, then usability test. So this is where, because it is a zoom in to what would normally be a longer process, we could hear more from Thibault about some of his thoughts and hypotheses and challenges along the way, because in the real world and ideal world too, you might follow the double diamond and really diverge and converge rather than focus on a feature. And he could flourish and give us a bit more insight into who he is as a designer beyond the task at hand. And then maybe a little tip on the presentation of the screens. I think they're really nicely presented at first glance. Maybe they can be a little smaller so we see more at one glance. And if you annotate, just give us some notes on what's happening, maybe even what you did or what you would have done, and if you could go back, it helps us understand your thought process.
Cool. Anything else to add from the rest?
I will add into the point of like, what would you done different? I feel like I get a lot of not excuses, but comments about people like, oh, I don't have time to redo my portfolio, or like, I don't put this project in because it's not perfect, which I think is also a good opportunity to like then review what you have and just write. You don't have to redo the project, but you can just explain what after seeing it, after like looking at it, or like if you would have more time, what would be the changes, and just write those down. Like you don't have to redo the project, you just explain what you would have done differently. So sometimes, like, I know junior designers don't have enough projects, or they don't want to show a specific project because it's not perfect. That's fine too. Like, show the imperfect project and just explain what would you do differently. I think that also.
Take on it. I like that. I like that thinking. That also shows some character, some strength in like, hey, look, like I have grown past that in a sense, and like I'm self-critical in a sense as well, right? Like it kind of gives some personal traits away. Awesome, very nice. We have one more to go. That is actually a PDF portfolio. I'm very scared to pronounce the name wrong. Sadzida, I guess, UI UX designer / visual designer. I'm going to scroll through the portfolio. She's directly starting in with, basically a showcase, talking about the project, talking very detailed about the role, actually highlighting the tools that have been used in that project. And I think that's kind of the pattern that she's running with. So just 1 page per showcase, but keeping it very concise and to the point. Looks like, okay, we got 3, 4, 5, and a couple more coming. So they're all built up the same way. And then she has her layout design portfolio here. Some of my layout designs work, which include brochures, presentation slides. So she's basically also bringing in her pure visual and graphic skills on top of her UI work. And here she switched up the layout a little bit, and only, or included a couple of her layouting projects as well. Yeah, and then closing it off with basically, again, our LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to round it off.
I'm gonna jump in quickly. So I think all in one is it great, but when you look at the role, she's always writing, okay, UX UI design research, but she didn't describe exactly what she really did on this part. So this is what I left a little bit, or this is what I want to see a little bit more, I guess. But what I like is that you have on 1 page 1 project, so you can go very fast into a lot of projects and see the design. But especially on the role, is it maybe a little bit more description.
I think now we have like seen 3 very different portfolios in terms of length and depth of the showcase, right? Like we went from one that was very, very long, very detailed in every step. The last one that we reviewed, it was more concise already, but still a bit more depth. And this one is like, it's hitting it off basically on a 1-pager. What is your take? Like, what is the ideal? Is it the middle, or is it also, again, depending on like what you are applying for?
Yeah, it's depending more on what you're applying for.
Yeah. Marcus, you agree as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, I mean, going back to what we said before, it's kind of probably too many things. I think there could be a little bit more focus, and then you could also talk a little bit more about some of the details, I imagine. But otherwise, I mean, if you wanted to provide just an overview, that would be fine as well. If there's enough depth to kind of the intro, and then I have to disagree on the role stuff a little bit, because I think there's actually more in there than usually, because not everybody's giving so much detail on the role they had. But then maybe what's missing on that end might be what other roles were involved or something. So, and the other little opinion I can provide is I would leave out the tools. I mean, I'm not a big fan of talking too much about the tools. It's kind of a hygiene thing that nowadays people need to use those tools, or like can upskill fairly quickly in those. So I think it's an unnecessary kind of
it doesn't have that much
the page
anymore, right? Like it doesn't really matter which tools you're accustomed to, I guess. Like in the digital world, you as you said, should switch or be able to upscale quite quickly there.
So looking through this, I can see it from many different lenses. If I see this person as a freelancer, then this is more of a showcase document. They might send out a prospective customer or client, in which case it makes total sense to have all of this work to really prove their, their experience, ranging from product design, web design, to layout design. If applying for a role, applying for a job, then it's different, and it makes a really great master template to have at home and say, great, I am applying for a layouting job, therefore let me remove all of the non-layout work and just focusing on the layout screens. So I think that as an example of a PDF template and PDF portfolio, it's actually pretty good. There's a good template in place. All I'll say is, on the first page, if there is a website, if there is somewhere, also just hook me, give me everything I need. And I'm going to very politely disagree with Marcus a little bit and say that I actually do value seeing the tools, because there have been some conversations around the transition to Photoshop to Sketch to Figma, and this has actually been quite a positive conversation with some candidates who feel fearful of applying for a job because they may not be that strong in Figma. And we can, again, nurture and support them in getting comfortable, because tools aren't that different. But whether it's a showstopper, that's fine. Maybe it's a personal thing.
Yeah. I mean, opinions are different, right? I mean, that's good. We like it would be a sad and streamlined world if we would all agree on everything in that sense. So a little bit of disagreement doesn't hurt at some point. Cool, awesome. That have been our portfolios. Thank you guys very much. Again, thank you and everyone that sent in portfolios for us to review. As said, we can't look through all of them, but you have known or have heard all of the companies that my lovely co-hosts are working for. So maybe there are some open positions that you want to give a shot. So you can test your portfolio in real life as well, and not only with reviewing it with us. So why not give it a shot? And yeah, I mean, I want to be very, very with the time. So we have like 20 minutes left. I want to use the last 15 minutes now for some Q&As. We have received quite some questions, quite some interesting questions. I just sorted them here on my end with the most upvoted ones. I'm going to read them out. The first one is from Robert. He would be interesting to understand what your thoughts are on portfolios for career changes that are very unlikely to have a portfolio, and what would you recommend someone that is actually switching the career that has no UX UI portfolio? What would you suggest for a person that is switching? Whoever wants to take it first?
I'll take. I think we have said that we need a portfolio. I think the concern here may be that they want to show that they have experience. Like they're not, because also working for a company or doing some sort of job is already experience that you can bring in, and you can bring in that experience into a different context. So I will try. Like, what did they say? Where were they coming from? Sorry,
that wasn't mentioned in the question. It was just career change.
Yeah. Sometimes there's certain careers that you can like adapt into like the product design because of the thinking is the same. Like we are solving problems. So try to like take those projects that you have worked in the past and showcase them. Like you might not have visual designs or prototypes, but you can still tell the story. So create a portfolio based on like whatever experiences you have had and make like use it in your advantage. Use your experience that you had into like how you will use that into a product design role or a UX research role, whatever role they're trying to get into. So you do need a portfolio. You might not have the visuals, but try to find a way to like connect your past experience into like your new path.
Yeah. Cool.
In this case, would it make sense to tip in a little or give a little bit more text and not only, I don't know, like screenshots from any case of project, to describe exactly what you want to show. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. I hope that answers your question. Like, try and adapt what you maybe can take away from your past job, try to model it into, show us the thinking, show us like how you can like in your past job. I think that is already a good thing. And I mean, if you want to switch career, you might be doing some Udemy courses, you might be doing some dummy projects, then use those combined with the experience that you have and try to transform it. Doesn't have to be then a full-blown portfolio maybe, but try to transform it into something that shows us and sparks our interest. The next one is an absolutely amazing question. It's from Andre. What chances do junior candidates have if the recruiters are overexposed to great and senior portfolios and are then expecting way more from juniors than they maybe should? Like, what is your take on that? How do you frame your mind when looking at portfolios, senior, mid-level, junior? Like, how do you try to mitigate that?
It's always depending the requests of our clients. But yeah, it's a difficult question, to be honest.
What does the rest think? If you're reviewing a portfolio, you obviously know what position you're looking at that for, right? Like, how do you offset your mind and try to like evaluate it differently?
What we do at Personio is we don't necessarily set out to hire a level of seniority. It's really down to the candidate, and we also review portfolios, you could say blindly. So it's not they're saying we're only looking for a senior person. We look and see what interests us. Now, this is because we have this philosophy and mindset of going in and being very flexible. I'm not going to hire 10 senior product designers, for example, because then I also need to think about growth and the dynamic of the team. So I'm very lucky to work in an environment where I can review people individually. Ultimately, this is where, again, putting your best foot forward, seeing the work and saying, okay, the impression I get from is this person might be an early to mid-level product designer. And then we'd go to interview. And again, there's another check and another opportunity for interviewers to say, this person is, junior level or mid-level, and we really assess based on the perspectives. But there's no direct comparison. I mean, obviously, if we're hiring someone at a senior level and at a junior level, we're not expecting the same level of portfolio quality.
So you think more like they shouldn't be afraid of that, like just because there might be a lot of senior profiles in the company already, or they're also looking similarly for junior and senior profiles, that they might be overlooked because of they are in a more junior position?
I'd hope not. And also I'd say, if you think that you're junior and you see a mid-level role, apply for it. Like, just go for it, try. If anything, you might, even if you apply for a senior role, you might still get someone's attention and you might be considered in the process. Yeah. You have nothing to lose. That's my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Sorry, do we have time? Should I?
Yeah, no, go ahead. We still can. I mean, it was one of the most liked questions, so for that reason, definitely.
No, I mean, I think we are a little bit more specific in a sense that we definitely look at the team makeup and those things and then hire for a specific role. But we are a little bit more flexible on the mid-level end, and we've just hired somebody junior, technically for what we call professional role. So it is possible, but I think it's the other way around than the question is phrased. I think it's you need to stand out if you want to then compete with those, and then and that's possible. I mean, just because somebody has worked at 2 companies and has a little bit of a portfolio doesn't mean that they are more outstanding than maybe you, who invested way more time in the profession and are more excited about it and more passionate and all that stuff. So if that comes across in the portfolio, that I don't see why we wouldn't kind of talk to that person and be interested in it. So it's definitely a mix of things. And I think from a portfolio perspective, you can stand out as a junior as well. I don't see the problem. For us, it would be harder to, for instance, if we hire for a senior role, then we definitely want somebody senior, and because that person needs to fit in a specific place and maybe mentor a junior person. So then it would be a little harder. But for like the roles that don't have a specific level attached to them, then that's a little easier.
Yeah. Cool. I hope that answers your question here as well. Another one that we've gotten, and that is kind of a combined question. I'm myself also very curious about it, because that's kind of a trend that's currently also emerging. And Stephen, you said it at the very beginning. You're no longer like looking for UI or UX. You're looking more into product designer, and that's like been a bit the trend, I think, throughout the last years. Still, it's like the question was, how do we differentiate when we look at a portfolio between UI, UX, or product designer? And what do we still see as the difference between these three roles, which is not really three roles, but maybe Stephen, as you already mentioned it.
This is a can of worms, and it's a really great question. I'm really glad it was asked, because the way I read the question was, what is the difference between a UX role and a product designer?
There was actually a second question that was referring to it, so I tried to combine it as well, which was like, how to distinguish when we look at portfolio, if it's UI, if it's UX, if it's product design. Like I kind of like this.
So this is tricky. This is super tricky, right? Because different companies and different countries refer to roles differently. And for example, I spent several years in London where UX was very specific to wireframing and really designing the steps in the process, but not the UI and the design system fidelity. Elsewhere, UX is the name for a department, which includes product designers. So I would flip this and say, who are you as a designer? Don't necessarily label it, but what is it that makes you? And just be clear about who you are, so that you can, again, move forward confidently. If you see a role which is labeled product design or UX, it's blurry in the industry, and different companies mean different things. So know who you are. Don't expect to know the role. And I'm really sorry, because we haven't made this clear for people, and we need to. I would really like us to make this clear for people. I see Gabriella's also nodding. I kind of want to hear yours.
Yes. Totally agree. Titles, roles, sometimes for me, I'm like, it doesn't really matter. I do consider myself a product designer, more of a generalist now, with a little bit more focus on UX design. So the way that I see, like, a product designer should be able to take a project from end to end, and but there is always going to be a focus in which that person guides themselves into. So a product designer should be able to do everything, but I'm sure they'll follow more into either the UX side or the UI side. So it depended on the spectrum. But then if you want to just only focus on the initial part of the process, then you might want to consider yourself a UX designer. And if you don't really want to do all the hard thinking at the beginning and just want to do the visual parts, then you might just want to call yourself a UI designer. But I will say a product designer, or the way that I see it, is someone that's going to be able to do end to end. But at the same time, you should also define, where's your strength? Is it more towards the UX side, or is it more on the UI side? And I do believe that's one of the questions that always gets asked in interviews. So if you get past the portfolio round, be ready to respond to that as well.
Especially
I
on
love that answer. Like, Henry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I just jump in. Especially on the product design stuff. Some designers which are or who are more focused on the UX side are using the title UX product designer, and I also saw some UI product designer. So in general, there are UX UI designers with the focus on UX or UI, and just put it on the beginning on the title. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think, Steven, what you just said, like we are a bit like we as the industry leaders, and I mean also like hiring people, we're a bit in charge of that whole thingy. But I think, Gabriela, what you just said, I mean, I just reference it from the whole development world, and I think also that's a bit where it's coming from. What we have, like this full stack developer role, and that's like also something like if we are hiring an engineer and we also want them to be able to do like basically the full on set, but they should have a specialization. Like they need to be able to tell us where their heart is at. And I think that's like a bit similar with the whole UI UX role. You can't be tremendous, like you can be generalist, but you can't be tremendously good in both things, right? You might, there needs to be a tendency or like and you're that can switch throughout the career. But I think it helps us if you can communicate that clearly, because we also know where to put the person or like how to upskill her, educate her looking forward in that sense.
No, I need to also add something.
Yeah,
Could you want to go to another question?
Like we then have one more, if your answer now, and then we have time for one more question, which I think is still.
I just wanted to say we have a more generalist approach to the role itself, and then because people work in a product team, in a product trio, and so they have to work with a product manager and the engineer, and so they are kind of necessarily from the role they are filling, they need to do both. And what we are trying to be basically install kind of support systems of like a really good design system and a really good kind of an end-to-end team that kind of supports all the product designers in the teams to kind of give them some guidance for like more specific kind of UI tasks, like interaction tasks, or then on the process side, we also have discovery people that can help product designers to get there a little bit upskilled and all that stuff. So
awesome. I mean, I think we have the same take on it, so I hope that answers the question from that perspective. Last question to round the whole panel talk off, and it's actually something that we haven't touched at all, which is quite interesting. What is your take on bootcamp, UX, UI certificates, and showcasing the work out of these things in your portfolio? Maybe I like to be a two thing question. Like one thing, what is your take on like having something like that in your resume, and like in general, like boot camps, UX, UI camps, UX, UI courses, and then like also using that work in your portfolio? Take it away.
I think people coming from, sorry, Steven, I beat you to it. But yes, those people coming from boot camps, like that's all they have. So that's all they're gonna be able to share. So I don't think that's it's like showing a fake project. But this actually does have a little bit more insights to it, because I do have a mentee who just went through a boot camp, so I do know a little bit more about it. I didn't do a boot camp myself, so I don't know. I'm not too sure what they do in there, but based on the information I've received from him, they do work in projects as a team, and they do go through the entire process. So it is a very good case study where you can show like your skills and what you have learned. What I have seen though is that those people coming from boot camps are trying to explain the process in the case study. And that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for the thinking behind it. So make sure they don't focus on what they've learned, so the practices of the industry, but more of like, what is your thinking about that?
Cool. Steven, you were trying to grab the mic as well. You want to add to that?
Just unmuting myself discreetly. But one thing I would say here is that, so building on Gabriela's answer, it doesn't hurt But I would also say that people don't necessarily need to have a formal design education or these certificates to, some people are self-taught and they're amazing. So my point here is that, is it going to hurt you? No. Is it essential? No.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. I think that was our roundtable for this evening. I mean, we have I think 40 more questions, but in the end, we can't answer them all. For all that we didn't answer, I have seen a lot of questions that we did answer during the first part of our talk. So if you joined late, if you have missed the first bits and the first discussion, we will send out the YouTube link basically, I guess, somewhat tomorrow into all the different groups where you have signed up. So you should receive that one as well. So you can rewatch the first bit where we answered a lot of the question that I've seen in the Q&A channel. I want to thank everyone who made it tonight and came out to watch us. And obviously I want to give a special thanks to my co-hosts. It was lovely chatting with you and picking your brains. That was obviously very, very insightful. And I think we could, and I hope we provided a lot of detailed and industry information for the audience. And yeah.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Real pleasure. And with that, yeah, I wish you all, my co-hosts, and all the people watching a great evening or a great start to the day or a great end of lunch break, wherever you are currently sitting in the world. And yeah, thank you and see you in the next one.
And we're hiring at Personio.
Nice evening.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.